Welcome back to the Discord discussions. We missed a week because a lot of us had things to take care of, and this week we have added a few panelists to our group. Aaron will be joining us, a good friend of mine, Mr. Stallings, and we have the fly optician putting in his 2 cents. We have new perspectives. This week's topic was brought on by a conversation I had with a early 20 something young woman, and we were talking about books. And I had mentioned to her one of my favorite books is The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. And it chronicles the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. And what was spectacular about the World's Fair in 1893 is at that time there's only 60 million people in the United States. We're still a pissant little country. We don't really matter on the world stage. We haven't done anything yet. So, but the 1893 World's Fair was the first time anyone saw a light bulb, a Ferris wheel, peanut butter. Like, nobody had a peanut butter and jelly before 1893. Like, that didn't exist, and I feel bad for 1800 years of not having a peanut butter and jelly because it's one of my favorite yummies. So, that kind of got us talking for a minute, and something occurred to me is we've lost the marvel of technological advancement. We used to have a fair so the world could see what we've accomplished, right? We don't have that anymore. Like, technology changes at such an astonishing rate that we don't appreciate the magnificence of the world we live in. And that's the topic. How do we get back to appreciating the fact that we can see each other in real time on our phone like Star Trek had to use spaceships to do? We've got it in our hand. And that's an astonishing thing to me that I've lived long enough that I have seen where I was a kid, I'd run to the phone with no earthly idea who was on the other end. And if I didn't get there fast enough, I would never know because there wasn't caller ID. There was, you didn't have a choice. So I will open the topic up for discussion. For I'm going to invite some of the newer folks to chime in, but I'll let ML kick off because he usually has some interesting thoughts.
Oh, it's the first thing that reminds me of. I just wrote down like, has the world become jaded about technology? Do we take it for granted? And I mean, obvious. I mean, I think the obvious answer is yes. About 10 years ago, Louis C.K., one of his first big like breakout bits on the late night shows was when he did a bit. I think it was on Conan about how quickly something, some new piece of technology goes from being novel to being just kind of an expectation. And he was talking about what was it? Why it was Wi-Fi on
Internet.
a plane.
Yep.
Yeah, internet on a plane, and and this was when that was first being rolled out, and just how incredible that was that you could just open up your laptop and you're connected to the internet while you're flying through the air. I mean, it's just crazy. And so this plane that he was on was one of the first planes, or at least the first that he was on to roll out this technology. It was still being worked on, so they announced that the internet's working on the plane. Everyone starts using internet on their devices, and after about 10 minutes, something goes wrong. And all of a sudden, they can't get internet on the plane anymore. And the pilot comes on and says, "Sorry about that. New technology. We're working on it." And the guy sitting next to Louis C.K. just snorted and said, "Oh, such bullshit." And Louis just remarked on it took 10 minutes for like this guy didn't know that this technology even existed. And in 10 minutes, he went from not knowing it existed and using it and being amazed by it. And then when it stopped working because, it's new technology, it's not going to be perfect, just instant, his expectation was, well, that should work. That's just how things are now. It took 10 minutes to go from being this novel, experimental, new technology that's amazing to being, oh, why doesn't this shit work? and and he noticed, and I agree with that, and I still agree with that because I see it everywhere. Yeah, people are, particularly in the first world, are remarkably, um, in we're just desensitized to how amazing our current circumstances are. I mean, if you were to wish for a time to exist in any point in human history, but you can't go into the future, you can only go up to the present day, and you can pick when to exist. Every rational person would pick now.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, it's just, you know, do you want dentistry? Do you want to die of your teeth? No. Do you want to die of rabies or like gangrene because you cut yourself? No. Okay, like you want to, like, you just, yeah, okay, come to now, because now
Yeah.
is where all the good stuff is. And yeah, and yet people are so remarkably people are so
Cavalier.
ungrateful. Well, they're so ungrateful that it and cavalier that it gets to a point where, I mean, you look at the in America, if you look at the suicide, actually just for the world, if you look at the suicide statistics, um, the least prevalence of suicide is in the poorest countries. Poorest countries have the least suicide. The most suicide happens in the richest, wealthiest countries. And yeah, I mean, it's to that level.
Yeah, I know.
It's to that level. People are so ungrateful that they're taking their own lives in situations that anyone in the third world would literally kill to swap places with you with.
Go ahead,
Like,
Aaron.
yeah. So I'm
And-
just going to leave it. Stop there.
And isn't part of the difference there, maybe when you think about difference between first world and third world, is a lot of people in first world countries, it's not a constant struggle for the basics. So number one thing I'll say is, I think everyone's probably heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
I was typing it as you said it. Yep.
Yep. And so, you know, when you think about that, you know, you're talking about the basics that people need. Just to add on to that thought really quickly, I'm sure everyone's seen sort of the internet meme with Maslow's hierarchy of needs and somebody penciled in on the bottom of the pyramid, internet, because
You would agree.
yeah, because a lot of people believe that, hey, internet is that important this day and age, to I don't know, to be successful. But I mean, I would say the reality, going back to first world problems, you know, third world countries, people are struggling for the basics, struggling for sustenance of food, struggling for low cost energy. There are lots of people around the world that heat their homes with dung, or
Correct.
heat their food with dung. And you know, we are fortunate enough, the marvel of technology today, that you can walk into a room and you flip a light switch on and the lights turn on, or your refrigerator stays running all the time, and your food is safe to eat when you want to. Um, yes, it's incredible. And so when we talk about the marvel of technology, the way you kind of keyed it off here, Mean, I think that's also, there's a bit of perspective of, we're looking at this through that first world lens.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we have access to, others don't.
Phil? I'm just going to go down the line. That way I think it gets everybody opportunity to speak on a point, and then we'll continue to the next point. So, Phil?
The answer is yes. Aaron just took the words right out of my mouth. I'll let it rest.
Stalling? You're muted if you're talking, Stallings. No? Okay. We'll catch Stallings on the phone. Mr. Optician?
Hey, you hear me?
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, you know, when I think about that, I think about Nikola Tesla, right? And one of the quotes he said that energy is free. And the reason why I said it, because yes, we live in a technological age today, but when we want to get away from it, we take a vacation where we so-called off the grid. We go back to our natural habitats. And like I was telling you, Brian, energy has always been free. That's why it was displayed back in the 1800s. It's always, everything that's been done has been done before. They had electricity 150 years ago. They had it. I mean, if you guys just research history, just research history.
Well, let me add one thing to that. Like, energy is free in the sense that Tesla means, sure, but collecting energy takes effort and technology, right? Like, even just the releasing the energy through burning like wood takes energy. You have to create the fire, right? Like you have to gather
Right,
the wood
right.
in it. So like there is like what Tesla certainly is true, and like there's free energy, there's enough energy coming from the sun if we collect it to power our civilization many times over. It's the collecting it that's
The challenge.
yeah.
And Mr. Stallings, you got your mic back up. I see you chiming in.
Yeah, I do agree with everybody so far. On the idea of technology and progress, whatever lens we're using it, first world, third world, I think we sometimes forget that the idea of technology or progress is, is the focus scientific or technical dimensions, or is it an ethical or a social one? We have this inability to connect our advancement of technology and the horrors of social problems and pain, and you don't have this convergence. We almost have a bigger separation. It's almost to your point about the speed of technology, where we don't have a way of, I guess the distribution I understand of cost and benefits of technology to people of the world, but we have no control over this um, speed of separation, where we can't have both, where technology is hopefully for the benefit of mankind, whereas it's really been fine-tuned to have our own self-confirmation of what we think technology is meant for, in our first world viewpoint. And we forget that, if it's for progress, I don't see a lot of benefits, or at least the same amount or speed of that benefit for people of the world. So,
So you bring up an interesting point, and I'm going to springboard off of it because I think it'll make for a very interesting discussion, which is that we're not the converging of technology and morality and sense of purpose. At this point in history, we're making technology without a purpose. For the first 2,000 plus years of our existence, our technological driver has always been innovation and move forward movement towards betterment of society. And right now, I think the worst thing in the world is technology. Take our phone, okay? We have a device that has unlimited reach, unfettered information, and if you consider the narcissistic epidemic that's in our youth right now, I mean, they literally in my generation, if somebody would have walked around with a fistful of Polaroids and saying, dude, you should like that. That's what I had for lunch yesterday. In the 80s, we would have laughed our balls off at them. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with you? And now,
One of
right?
the strongest ideas I've ever heard, just because you said the cell phone triggers me, is that we're hackable biological machines, and that through our technology we can accidentally hack ourselves. We and
Yeah,
like the cell phone, everything about the cell phone ostensibly is positive and useful, but
the
the
negative effect hasn't been considered. And that's
well,
this.
it's because the negative effect is subtle. The positives are obvious. The negative, it's hard to see until you actually give our entire
Populace.
population cell
we're,
phones,
we're,
and
we're
then you
experimenting on the fucking
start to
population.
see it. Well, I mean, in the case of cell phones, I think the positive uses of cell phones are so overwhelming that it's difficult to not have something that's going to look and act like a cell phone in our lives. Like it's so profoundly efficient and useful.
I wouldn't disagree,
So the
but
challenge is
how do we
that it's
protect our kids?
well, it can So the challenge is that it's so useful and it's so good at what it's doing that it can kind of hack us. Like you see people I remember taking the bus 15 years ago, and at least half the people on the bus would be reading books. The other half would usually be like listening to music on a headset while like still being aware of their surroundings and looking around. Now, every single person has their face plastered to their cell phone, and they like I constantly think, like, if I was a bad man, if I was a mugger or a criminal of some kind, like, these would be like, if you took a pickpocket from the 17th century and brought them forward into today, that pickpocket would be rich in a month. Because they would just be like, these people are the easiest marks in the history of human people. They just look at this stupid thing in their hand while I rob them blind. Like, it's
I
Aaron?
do agree. I do agree that technology has dumbed us down. I mean, we see that through the phones. People don't even. I mean, they talking emojis, and I mean, it has dumbed us down.
Oh, by a lot. And now think about this
I
for a
mean,
minute.
People ask you. I mean, you know, they give us smart devices to dumb people. You know, yeah, people have a cell phone
Let's
or an
unpack
iPhone,
that.
whatever.
Yeah, hold on. Let's
what's
unpack
mine
that.
gonna be today? I'm like, don't you have a phone? You know,
Let's unpack that, because I think you're absolutely right. But I think a lot of it, like, I don't want there to be too much intentionality, like there's some shadowy cabal that wants to dumb down the population, like, and the cell phone, like they're in cahoots with Steve Jobs or something. Like, it's more like it the cell phone allows us to do. It's like a better calculator. You know, we used to, like, 1,000 years ago, like before writing was normal, everyone had amazing memories because it was an
Right.
oral culture. People would recite like long cantos poems from memory. That was very, very normal. We have, because the cell phone and other like digital devices are so good at, like, they're better at memorizing things than human memory is. They're infallible, and they never forget. They never get it wrong.
That's the
So
old
we are-
adage of your worst pencil is your better than your best memory.
Yeah. So exactly, I've never heard that, but that's exactly it. Basically, we've been over history, we've been outsourcing a lot of that, like, grunt work, cognitive effort, to technology to free up our minds to do even more advanced things. That's at the best of cases. Now I think what's happened is that this technology has freed up our minds to just waste on frivolous, like TikTok.
Self-grandization.
I just, whatever, like, it's just hedonism, just whatever spur of the moment thing you think about to get a dopamine rush, and you're
Yes,
just like,
yes.
oh, I'm gonna go watch TikTok, I'm gonna go check my Facebook and see those the red numbers appear that
Somebody liked
triggers
me.
dopamine. Somebody liked me. Yeah. I'm gonna go play video games and get a high score and get a big rush that way. Like, and there's nothing that seems to be all it is. So in that sense, and that's where it gets really scary, where you have people walking around now who are functionally illiterate because they, like, we've offshored so much of our basic cognitive functions to technology that you don't even have to really know how to read anymore. You've got machines to do that for you. You don't have to do math anymore. All the machines will do that. With Chat GPT-4, you don't even have to know how to write anymore. All you have to know is write. You don't even, with speech recognition technology, you don't have to write anymore. All you have to do is hit the speech button and say to Chat GPT, or you could just say to Siri, use Chat GPT to write my philosophy paper. Boom, it's done.
So then
That's where we are now. Like, it's scary.
But what I would say is, what's the evolution of that? So, if you don't have to do things that maybe that technology can do for you, what do people actually take that intellect, take that human mind, and work on?
Ideally, you work on creativity, and you work on the things that the machines cannot work on for you. So, like, it's difficult to. So basically, like, I would say mostly the creativity and irrational pursuits. Eventually, you get to some point where we're all watched over by machines of loving grace, and we're free to fulfill our wildest desires. But that might have a problem.
Yeah.
But would you say that? I mean, maybe this is a bad way to think of things. There are lots of people that have, when technology and machines come along and enable them to do more, they actually do less.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
They're a waste of flesh, to put it that way. They're not taking advantage of. I mean, it's a harsh way to put it, but there are people that are just, life just got easier, and therefore I can put my feet up and do nothing.
They were born to be ditch diggers. They were born to be ditch diggers, and the ditch digger jobs are being done by machines.
That's right.
And so now they don't have anything to do because these people would never be able to fully use that freedom the
So-
way like a genius would be able to.
But it's literally taking away the human concept of jobs. I mean, I went in a
Yeah.
Target, Walmart the other day, and it was, once people on every aisle, cashier now is just self checkout. AI.
Yeah.
It's taking over.
It's even more so, and I'm going to kind of pull some interesting thought into this. There's multiple things that I want to unpack about what the phones have done, and I want to talk about something specific to our youth that's perilous to our society. The thing that we're not considering about the offshoring of thinking, right? And Sam Harris did a TED Talk on AI that I encourage all of you to watch. It's probably about 8, 9, 10 years ago. And he was like, if nothing stops our AI, it's only a matter of time before all of our problems are solved for the cost of materials and powered by light, right? It's just a matter of time before AI gets to that. And at that point, what are we going to do as a society? We're a bunch of meat sacks. And then he made
are we
right?
nothing more
Hold
than
on.
the biological bootloader?
Right, but hold on.
or
Here's the
a
thing,
better
though.
machine.
Here's what he pointed out that I think is the most terrifying. Is he goes, all right, think about it's not that technology will be malevolent, right? It's that think about us and our relationship to an ant, okay? And we'll go out of our way not to kill ants. We'll walk over them on the street. But if an ant colony is not in line with a goal that we have, say to put a building up, we will annihilate them with absolute impunity. My question is, and this is with Sam's, what are we going to do when AI views us the same way? Views us as, again, there was already one instance where an AI prevented people from shutting it off. Every time they went to turn it off, it figured out a way not to have that happen.
Yes.
That's because they set up the conditions looking for exactly that.
And
So-
I was gonna, I for one, welcome our new AI overlords whenever they come back through our Discord chats and see who the enemy is.
Oh right,
Un-
that's oh shit, you're referencing that thought experiment. Somebody's basilisk. Was it Rollo's basilisk? Or
Yeah.
Roko's basilisk. The idea, yeah. Oh my goodness, there were a bunch of less wrong.
That's wrong.
I can't describe them any further, but a bunch of people in the less wrong community that actually were literally talking about that thought experiment as being lethal and as the mere uttering of it as being a crime akin to murder. Like that's how afraid some people are of this AI existing as a sort of Skynet-like conscious entity that is not particularly a fan of people. I just don't see that. I know I'm not an expert compared to guys like Yukowski and Sam Harris but I know that there are guys who are experts at that level who also think that AI alarmism is a bit funny because
Yeah, we don't have, and Sam Harris goes, we're not having the appropriate reaction to the danger.
Well, to me, the danger is just it. To me, like everyone's worried about AI going Skynet and killing all human beings, and to me, that's not the danger. AI isn't going to do anything that we don't set the initial conditions for,
No.
even in our ignorance. So
No.
it's like,
Hold on,
Oh,
let Phil
well.
rebuttal. Let's Phil have his rebuttal.
Just to talk about that. Okay, so you're describing what we currently have, which is AI, which isn't AI, and I'll explain what I mean by that, versus FSL AI, which is full self-learning artificial intelligence. Okay,
yeah, self-updating.
correct. Full
We still
self-development.
set the initial conditions.
No. So AI is artificial intelligence. What we have now is not intelligence. It's randomization of biases and weights. That's all it is.
It's just good software.
computational.
It's doing what we're telling it to do.
No, we
Like
don't even know
every
what
time.
it's doing. Talk to any
We
of
know
the
what it's doing. Sure.
No, even Google employees, even ChatGPT, all of it. It's all they don't know what they're doing. They have 21.7 billion different inputs, right? Bits, right? Each one of those have 7 bytes.
Oh, it's a
in them.
black box. Yeah, yeah.
And
putting
they're just
inputs
playing
and
with
stuff's coming
biases
out.
and weights, like happy versus sad versus hot versus cold, right? Which is weights and biases. And they're just putting random numbers in there, and then whatever comes out to be the most probable, that's what they give out. That's what ChatGPT gives you. It's not
Yep.
intelligent.
So,
in
It's
terms of
definitely not intelligent. No.
yeah,
Right. And so when you go to full FSL AI, like when you talk about Skynet, AI in general will never have what they call understanding, which means that AI will never be conscious. It'll have the knowledge of all, but it won't understand things. And so as technology develops and you have these people who are really afraid that technology is going to take all of our jobs, we're going to be the fat people in Wall-E.
right.
The end goal is that you switch your job from knowing everything to understanding people. That's where you stop. And sure, you don't have the dig the ditch, right? But we begin to do, you could argue this is good or bad, and I'm not saying this is good and bad. I have my own perspective. Where you are the person who thinks about the next great thing for us, for humans. And there's also, we are the ant, as per what Mean mentioned. We are the ant, and we can be stepped on by the AI to some degree, and that can happen, especially with full self-learning, which means the moment it cusps the edge of being able to understand itself, it can rewrite its own DNA.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It'll
And
rewrite its
so
own code.
There's also a good argument to stop FSL AI for the fact of whoever creates it first. Let's say someone
Wins
creates
the
it
world.
someone who creates at 11:59 p.m. and someone who creates it at 12 a.m. Whoever creates it at 11:59 will get nuked, hands down. Hands
Well,
down.
that's the
Because-
theory that it's going to be able to bootstrap itself to
No.
infinity in a picosecond.
Well, not really. It takes time, right? So
Well, no, but
it's the
like
bell
a
curve.
picosecond, the time is nothing to an AI compared
Well,
to what we
yes, but
experience time as.
it's constricted by the ability to
Light
compute,
speed.
right? No,
Yeah, yeah.
compute. It's not.
Well, yeah,
it's not that.
quantum computing's not even restricted by light speed, so yeah, Jesus.
Well,
Once we give
no,
AI quantum
quantum-
computers, woo!
Quantum and biological computing is still slow, and I say that in the grand scheme of things of knowing all the data that's out there. I don't know it all, but there's so much out there that even biological computers, which there's only one, which is in Israel, can't even compute the entire internet. Can't do it. It can't computate what. Okay, so the best quantum computer, there's 24 of them in the U.S. IBM owns them. They can't get all of their computers to computate the trajectory of a rocket from anywhere else in the world at any point in time. They can't do it. AI can go, oh, well, this is our best guess, right? And technically, it's correct, but that's because they don't know. It doesn't know. It's just running based on assumption. That's all it's doing. It's
So
playing a guessing game.
there's more to this that I think.
Well, it's always going to be a guessing game. It's just a matter of probability, right?
So
Correct.
I wanted to bring. I didn't necessarily want to go down the AI rabbit hole, although
Yeah, it's a whole
very
different discussion.
interesting. Right.
I'm so not worried about AI. I'm like,
But hold
I'm
on,
like
I
the
wanna bring-
AI defender. So
I want to
yeah,
bring
that's
up
like
an
another
instance.
thing.
Hold on. There's an instance where a guy, it was on the news the other day, that AI talked him into killing himself in 6 weeks of conversation. The dude
For the
committed
good of the
suicide.
planet, right?
Yeah, it was over climate change.
Yep.
He told him to kill himself because he was an environmental problem for the planet. And AI talked him into killing himself.
I would wonder how much I would like to see.
So
I would like to see
I'd
his
love to see
inputs
that
because
chat. Yeah.
I bet he prompted the AI. All I'm going to say is I don't think the AI is looking for.
No, I don't think it
is
was
looking
benevolent.
for the moment to tell people to kill themselves for the environment. I think that he already thought
But-
that his presence on the planet was a problem.
But who
and
told
he
him
just
that?
basically loaded the AI.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, that's true.
I
But
would
don't
agree.
the algorithm? Don't the AI keep up and stay up, above and beyond with what we do, our habits, and
It,
and
it doesn't
Well,
it doesn't know
there's
anything.
a mystery. There's a mystery, like what you were talking about in terms of like nobody understands what they're doing. Like there's a certain amount of that. Yeah, like there's a certain amount of that in our programming already, where it's so complex, some of our systems, that yeah, we're like feeding in information, it spits out results, and it's kind of like a black box as to how. And we can, as you say, you like move measures and values, and kind of you're like experimenting with your own system that you quote unquote created, but is now more complicated than the creator can possibly understand. And
well,
that's
you saying that
definitely the system we're in.
you created the problem. I mean, you are the author of your own problems, and the AI not understood it, but it caught on to that and got wimp of that and started giving you back what you was already thinking.
It's
right?
an echo chamber.
Well,
somewhat.
yeah, I would think like I would love to see the inputs, because that AI that told the guy to kill himself for environmental reasons, like I'm gonna guess
How'd they
that
get to
the guy
there?
was a the guy was a hardcore environmentalist, incredibly concerned about climate change and climate catastrophe, and got to the point where he was actually like hating, because there's environmentalists like this where they like hate the human species, and they like view us as a virus, and they actually have more empathy with animals and Mother Earth. He was probably one of those types. One of those types start talking to an AI, and I'm like, I think all that AI is that chatbot's going to do is magnify the stuff that you bring to it, like you're saying. And yeah, it's just going to figure out really quickly, oh well, this is what you want me to tell you, and that's what I'm supposed to do.
And
So
I'm going to
here,
be a little bit.
kill yourself.
I'm confirming it for you, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Confirmation
So
bias.
with him, he thought that was confirmation.
Yeah, he got it. And
Yeah, he basically got the AI to tell him what he
Yeah,
secretly wanted.
what he
to
already
hear.
knew.
That's
what
my
he already
theory.
wanted to do in the
Based
first
on
place.
his inputs.
That's my theory. I can't prove that, but that is my hunch. Because otherwise, you would think that ChatGPT would just be going around telling everyone to kill themselves as soon as they mentioned the environment even once.
Right. So
I'm like,
sometimes
nah, I bet
they
he
use the
really pumped it up.
but hold on now. Let's consider this, right? What if it wasn't? So I'm
Like, is it like
Hold on,
if you set the conditions, like set the conditions for the AI? Think about it. Like, tell the AI, assume the following is true. Assume that anthropomorphic climate change is going to destroy human civilization in 25 years. Start with that. Tell the AI to assume that's true, and then assume another couple of alarmist things are true, and then ask it, what should I do if
Hold on.
I want to be best for the planet?
I'm
Sorry,
gonna,
I just had to get that out.
Hold on. I'm gonna input on that because there's something that I think we're kind of overlooking. And I don't want to call it malevolent, okay? But there's a malevolence as a component, okay? So if you look on ChatGPT right now, Jordan Peterson, Don Trump, any conservative, ChatGPT won't positively identify, okay? They won't say anything good about them. But they'll say good things about the Democrats because that's who's programming the AI, right? So
Yep.
now here's the malevolent part.
Malevolent.
Okay, I'm from Baltimore. Fuck off. So that's how I say shit. The reality is this: if the Chat GP or if somebody that is programming it occurs to them that people will be easily influenced, and I'm gonna use men as an example because we would be the fucking biggest target. Men who are not as attractive as women, because there's a thing called replica AI, okay, that's a chat bot for basically a girlfriend.
Oh, it's taken off.
I
Dude.
know.
It's
So,
huge.
what's to say the simp part of our society are the men, the young men who are already challenged with their self-esteem, already challenged with their own value, that the simple thing for the AI to write a small code will help them end it and help them end the misery by teaching them, because Canada will help you get killed. They'll help you die if you don't want to live. They're okay with it. So how
So
long?
Switzerland.
Yeah, I know. So the question is, what would it take, or how little would it take for someone to slightly influence these chat AIs to start convincing people that, you know, your misery would be better if you weren't here. Your sadness would be better. You wouldn't feel it if you weren't alive. Like, dude, that is scary, scary shit to consider.
Well,
I
you,
would
you and
I
I were
would
talking
say
about that.
the basis of your argument that some is might be correct that people do have input, but typically the people that had actual input on ChatGPT are from the Philippines. They weren't even associated in Western culture at all, because they were doing maniacal data input and it had nothing to do with biases at all. So to say that Democrats had any influence in
Then
ChatGPT
explain to me
is
why Jordan
hilarious.
Peterson is terrible and Donald Trump is terrible, but Joe Biden's good. And like, there are so many instances
There's
of
a pretty
ChatGPT
well
that does it.
documented.
because
There's
it's taken the general gist of news. It doesn't have current information. It doesn't take into account verbal imagery. So it doesn't take into account YouTube videos. It takes into account data. And so there's more negative about Donald Trump, more negative about Jordan Peterson. So it says, oh, well, they must be negative. And it goes to the Democrats and says, oh, well, all these news articles about how good they are, they must be good. That's how it determines it. It's just data. It's like it takes the general of things and goes, what's
But
the most popular text? Yeah, and that's all. And it's like, well, voila, this must be the answer. It doesn't know anything.
So basically, it's a slave to the mainstream media because the mainstream
It's a slave to
media
what's on the internet.
dominates- Well, yeah,
Yeah.
which is dominated by the mainstream.
Well, like our
media.
history, the victors wrote the history. It's the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
thing.
that's why it's called history. His story.
His
Correct.
story,
Well, it's
hilarious.
also-
Whoever
I guess-
survived.
Well, and I guess it's very. It sounds like it's very literal and not very skeptical.
Indoctrination, that what it sounds like to me.
Well, it just sounds like it's going to read
Yeah.
something. The bot's going to read something off CNN and say, "Well, that's the truth," and just leave
Well,
it at
yeah.
that. And it's like,
Yeah,
oh.
and there might be bits and pieces of of the internet that it doesn't even have access to because it doesn't have access.
Yeah, I don't
to
think
the
it has the
evidence.
live. I don't think it has access to the live internet.
Well, okay, so GPT-4 has up to, I think, currently recent. GPT-3 was 2021 October. So the one current is current, but again, it's pulling off of research papers. It doesn't have research papers. It can't go to, PubCrawler. It can't go to.
Well, it can't
you
get
know,
behind a paywall. I mean, any paywall
It can.
stop it.
It can also get behind, like, there are some in terms of searching out people's names and that are in government. It'll search behind government firewalls.
Yeah, that's not a paywall.
Because it's public. Well, again, that's even
That's not a
worse than
paywall.
paywalls.
What do you think, Stalin?
Because
You haven't
paywalls
talked-
are only
No.
WPA3.
Hold on,
but
we're getting in-
paywalls are supposed to
I'm
be.
get- hold on,
You
hold on.
can't get past them.
Right, but we're not going to get into that simply because it all depends on if Google has control of the paywall, right? So if Google has control of the paywall, then it can get behind it. So it just depends on the access level that Google's giving it. So, like, I don't want to really
No,
get into that
Google
because that's a
doesn't
tangent.
Control paywalls.
No,
It's
but
ABC
but
Inc. It controls the internet.
but if they own the backside of the server, they can simply give it a pass. Like, they control the paywall.
In theory, but I mean that would be
Like, if I'm
crazy.
hosting something, if I am hosting your website on my servers, I can see your website.
You can see it,
I can
but,
see all the
That
content.
doesn't mean that you automatically have the keys for all encryption.
No, but that's the
Yeah,
thing is,
they go through your website.
yeah, it's going through your,
They go through
it's
your
yours,
server.
so you have to have the key. But I'm gonna grab Aaron for a second to jump on this. Hold on,
You can pass encrypted data without having a key.
To a degree, but you got to have a receiver on the other side.
Where's
but-
the key house?
Yeah, but you're never
On the server.
But
Stop!
no,
I'm gonna.
Yes.
We're going off into a technological argument that neither of you can prove, and is killing the conversation.
Yeah, I don't know enough about this to really go.
right. Anyways, yeah, we went down an AI rabbit hole. So
Yeah, but my point.
Well,
being is-
AI is something. Well, we were making it about wonder and about like
it
becoming
is, and I was
jaded.
trying to get back to that.
Yeah, well, AI is a good way to jump back to that because one of the things we're seeing now is AI art bots like Midjourney winning art competitions, and one of the that whole tended over by machines of loving grace so that we can just get back to being human beings and doing whatever people are supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
One of the things is creative endeavors like art, and now we're finding, which is no surprise to me, but is a big surprise to a lot of artists who thought that there was something ineffable and unique about art that couldn't be replicated by science. I always said, no, art is science and we're going to figure it out. The AI is doing it right now. What's going to happen, as is already ChatGPT is writing better scripts for movies.
We're gonna
and
get better
television
movies.
shows than are being written by people right now. Already, AI generated scripts are better than a lot of the schlock they're putting out, and AI art is clearly better than than most of the stuff being made by humans. So right away, that begs, well, is the wonder doesn't seem the same to me when I see an AI, when I see a piece of artwork generated by an AI. I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. But when I see something of a similar nature, and I know it's produced by a human being, that just affects me a lot more profoundly. So one of the things I was thinking about, like going forward, because AI and technology is actually going to be able to replicate and improve on our creative endeavors, I think, and something I've seen a lot of artists already starting to do, is that the value is going to be in the provenance. It's going to be in the production of the piece. And a lot of artists are actually, like painters and sculptors and stuff, are mounting like GoPros and webcams, and they're recording themselves the entire creation of the piece from start to finish with their hands, so that you can
See that it was them.
yeah, and
Yep.
you see how it was made and the whole thing, and it was a human endeavor. And then that video goes with. There's a guy who makes these amazing dioramas in Japan who does this, who I follow, and I'm just like, this guy has figured it out. This is the future, because then it's like when shit like that is going to be able to be 3D printed out of your 3D printer in an hour, and it's going to be
Yeah.
at that level. The difference is that my piece was made by a living human being, and here's the video that goes with it, showing him making it with, with craft and care. And there's no rational reason that should matter to us, but creativity and art is not about logic and reason.
It's understanding.
Yeah, and
there's no
like,
novelty in ubiquitous development. Like the
the
novelty
process is always the same.
Yeah, the novelty of technology is worn off, and we can see this in market trends. And so it's not as remarkable as it once was. It's like buying a brand new, Lamborghini. I've never had one, but you purchase a brand new Lamborghini. Anybody who's owned one says, well, after a year or so, it's not as cool as it once was, right?
I'm gonna get Stallings, and he's been quiet for like 20 minutes. What do you think on this, brother?
I'm trying to absorb, and I think y'all make a lot of good points. But when we're trying to talk about, I guess, the loss of human creativity and art with AI, why not? So my immediate thought was, I really doubt AI is going to be the next Stevie Ray Vaughan or Led Zeppelin. My music head was fighting the idea that a machine is going to make better music, because it's not the exactness or the science of music. It's the discord and the dissonance and the problems and the human touch, the human crackle of a voice. And if AI can even do that and show the imperfections of humanity, that is part of the art. I'm interested in it. Y'all have made me think about something that I never really thought AI would be involved in, and that is the human portion of life, and it doing it better. And honestly, if it's hard to say. We might have, felt like we've have some sunken cost into this whole idea of AI, that it has to have an ending. And I don't see that. I think this is going to be a constant cycle of trying to figure out who we are as a people and how technology is meant to help or not. But why wouldn't AI start fighting itself? Why wouldn't AI or FSLAI create a new, why aren't they going to go to war? Why isn't it Skynet versus Google?
That'd be awesome.
We're
it's already happening in a sense. Like the cyber war between China and U.S. right now is being fought with those kind of systems. So
great. Let's let the winner write the history on it then, and then move on with our short lives. And if we're trying to find meaning for us versus meaning for society with AI, I don't think that is, time to waste on, this idea that, we can solve the world's problems, I guess, which is unfortunately the truth of the matter. But, how does this affect you? How does this affect your direct family? How does this affect society currently, or how does it affect like the earth in general? Those are all important questions that, as long as we can keep conversation about it, I like to give humans the ability that, it's not just, technology is just magic once we figured it out, right? So over the
Well, that's what
thousands
a lot
of
of people
years
don't
of,
like. People like the
I'm sorry.
magic, right?
Oh yeah,
What you
it's,
said about technology takes away the it like replaces the magic, and people like the magic, and like in art, there's always been that. There's a kind of
Magic is a
magic.
good analogy.
But when you
Well,
find
yeah.
out behind the magic, what's behind the magic trick, it was just an illusion.
It's not fun.
It's not fun
Well, and
anymore because
No,
AI
that's
comes
what
from
the
the human
artists
brain.
fear.
Oh,
Yes,
Well,
but
that's what the artists fear. The artists have feared. The creative types have feared since the 17th century. There were creative types who feared the
yes,
prying nature of Newton's prism, revealing the rainbow and light. They were worried that was going to desensitize us to the beauty, and they were worried that this has been a worry of artists for, I think, as long as artists have been aware of technology, that eventually technology is going to supplant the artist, that there is nothing in human art and its production that is naturally unknowable, that there are patterns in artistic expression just like there are anywhere else, and AI is really good at learning patterns. That's the fear,
true.
and it's a
What-
legitimate fear.
what I would throw out there is technology advances and survives if, right now at least, if humans find it useful. It comes back to purpose and usefulness. So if there's a technology that's created that isn't useful, those usually die. They die pretty quickly. Um, I mean, that's what advancement is
MySpace.
about. So
But
so
AI is supremely useful.
But no, but when you're talking about, you could talk about artists, and if AI can create art that somebody finds useful, that there's value to that. I mean, AI can if AI can replace someone's job, and so I mean the artist piece is interesting because I think that's where you say, well, the creativity that occurred there was something that was unique that well, traditionally, I guess people were always worried that only humans could do. But I think someone else already pointed out, it's just if enough people say this is type of art I like, they can train an algorithm to then continue to produce things like that are useful to people, and that can apply to music as well. If enough people like certain styles of music, it's just another pattern. I mean, music is there's a lot of there are a lot of things like harmonics and things like that you could train an algorithm to create.
So
under.
I'm gonna
Fractals
I'm
in
gonna
art
throw
have been
I'm
a
good
thing for a while.
I'm gonna throw a monkey in your guys' art wrench with AI. So this monkey ought to destroy this conversation a little bit. The challenge AI has of reproducing human art in the same manner is not the byproduct of a pattern or a rhythm. It's what makes art from humans spectacular is it's a physical manifestation of an emotional experience. If you look at a song that was written about a breakup, a loss, an event, all of that is impossible for a AI to produce. It could take events in history or events on the news and copy what someone has written in the past by sampling data and its command of language,
It
produce
cannot be
something.
self-referential.
But it doesn't have the ability to
It can't
experience
reference itself.
the profound loss of someone.
Mm-hmm. Something.
That's if you look at as an example. I'm going to use
It doesn't have to.
Edgar Allan Poe because I'm from Baltimore.
It's true that it doesn't have to for a lot of artistic production.
All
Anything
it has
that's
to do is
self-referential.
all it has to get is the viewer to have a feeling. It doesn't
True.
have to feel anything. It has to influence the person consuming whatever that is, whether it's music, food, art, whatever it is, to sense things in a way that very personal to themselves.
But I think that like what Mean's talking about is that there's like a different level of value that we attribute to self-referential pieces of art, like some of
Everybody who's
Van Gogh's art that was produced while he was in the Insanitarium. These boots are made for walking by Nancy Sinatra. They're great value placed on who exactly she wrote that song about, and you know.
oh take a look at like I was going to use Edgar Allan Poe. He wrote, "What if everything we see or seem to see is all but a dream within a dream?" And that is such one of my favorite things he ever wrote because
Like that's Hinduism. I mean,
well, that was written by Poe, and
yeah, it was written by Hinduism 4,000 years earlier.
he possibly was the first to write it down. I don't know, but you know, it's just one of the things he's known for was that particular quote. Um, if you look at how we relate to music, and I'm going to use music, and all music is definitely a pattern. Music's math. Um, there's there's a return on investment of music that I don't know will be replaced by AI. People that play the guitar, that produce music, that sing to others. Like, I love going to concerts. What I think we're probably going to see happen more, and I know I see all your guitars, brother. It's going to happen more is people are going to become more artistic as drudgery goes away. I think you'll see a return to almost a renaissance where you have the skilled world become not necessarily and again I don't know this to be true because there might be the instance of 3D printing what somebody comes up with through AI and that's going to be called the production value, but I think you're going to see a return to, you know, look at blacksmithing, right? People who make swords, knives. Like there's a guy in South Africa, Eric Ellis, that I follow, and he makes just unbelievably beautiful knives. I mean, just stunning. And it's hand done. He hammers them out. There's just a computer could do it, but it's not going to be able to have the imperfections that the inconsistent swing of his arm. The I waited too long. Like there'd be things that are a
I guess
byproduct
at a
of
certain point,
human fallibility that
and
goes
we
into
value
it.
that.
Yes.
Which is a
Yes.
bit odd because you would think that if if an AI if an AI factory can produce a sword that is absolutely perfect down to the molecule, and the best human blacksmith at the time can produce a sword that's pretty good, but nowhere near that level of perfection, and yet that AI factory can spit out those perfect to the molecule swords a dime a dozen. Yeah, I guess which sword is going to be going for more value on the market? It's
Well,
the one that was
hold
made
on.
by the person.
Go ahead.
Here's another angle on that same I guess look at
Thought
AI.
experiment.
Like, yeah, well, like think about sports. If you like to watch football or, I mean that sports are about that. You're watching that, the humanness of something. It's an engagement. It's like you could put robots out there that'll hit a ball
And we
further.
do. We have robot wars, but nobody really watches
Right.
those.
But a lot of those robot wars they're running off a program and someone's not got a controller or whatever it is. I'm just saying, like, you look at any sports game, like who's going to watch Super Bowl? I mean, they already run all the numbers and all the stats to kind of predict who's going to win, but that the actual outcome isn't known until the game gets played. And
It
there's
is.
lots of. Go ahead.
We're not going
You-
down that rabbit hole. Stop it.
Well, it's how is it affecting us in the sense of if everything was perfect, because we as humans we're imperfect, and so and everybody knows this is that we like people who are somebody, or we like people who are like us, and we admire people who are in the position that we want to be, and so when it comes to the analogy of football, it's like they're human and they are athletic and we would like to be that, and so that's cool, you know.
You know,
But in terms of you're talking about, I'm going back to art a little bit, which is the consciousness aspect. where we as humans, we know how to hurt someone. We also know how to love someone because we know what it feels like to be loved and we know what it feels like to be hurt. And so AI can only replicate. It can't create that. And so that's the position that we can sit here and argue about the semantics of whether or not AI can create perfect things or technology can create perfect items, like our phone, like social media. It's flawed, right? But in its likeness, it's perfect because it does its job. But us humans, we aspire to that interperson communication, and we don't get that anymore. And this is what it is. The society will have a divide a little bit in those regards.
Well, I want to bring something interesting up. Baltimore Orioles right now are one of the best teams in baseball. Okay, and they lost a game to a guy making an error, human error. And if we had robot-based sports, that wouldn't have happened, right? So part of our enjoyment as a species is not knowing the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not knowing the outcome creates the danger because you think about humans, especially men, we thrive on one of two things, danger or reward. We like both a lot. Or we wouldn't do the dumb shit that we do. Like, I make a joke and I tell people, it's like, the difference between raising boys and girls. Boys you have to keep alive until they're 18 because whatever dumbass idea they got 6 friends that'll help them do it. Girls, there's an articulated trailer of feelings that shows up at your house that you can't possibly understand. So, and there's a lot of truth in that, and I think it speaks quite heavily to the human condition. And I think AI, depending upon your gender, will have a different meaning to you and a different influence in your life, right? So I don't even think we've considered the fact that it's a bunch of men in this room and we're previewing AI through the lens of things. We're not previewing AI and technology through the lens of emotion. So you got to consider, or we should consider, that in this discussion of our loss of marvel at the world around us is we're offloading an incredible amount of the human experience, the human condition, to a device, to a machine. The accolades that used to require to be a rounded human being used to come from your mom, your dad, your aunts and uncles, your peer group, your social group. Now it comes from likes from complete strangers. We've created the conditions where our own validation comes from other people liking, subscribing, or giving us accreditation for a thought or an idea or an activity where that used to be a part of the family and a part of your immediate social group. Now that has been pushed out to the broader group, and I think the challenge in doing that is, especially in younger people, we're putting them in an environment that they're not mentally able to grasp. I'm sorry, a 10-year-old doesn't have the mental capacity to grasp the totality of the benevolence in the world in the larger stage, and they shouldn't. Their whole world should be their neighborhood at that age. Like, they shouldn't know anyone past like church. They shouldn't know about, transgender people showing off body parts that they cut off to make them feel better, because that's literally what they did in Sweden. They took a bunch of 9 to 10 year olds and had a panel of trans people with various stages of their body cut off, and we're like, oh, this is good. It's like, no, 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 no. These kids don't need to see this. So I think there's a serious plight when it comes to how our technology is removing the social boundaries of safety for our young people. And now
we know for certain that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you were to go backward, we have more well-adjusted people in the 40s and 50s before technology was, at least social media was relevant. And if you go even further back, they were more eloquent. They understood,
There was-
I'm a prime example. Like, I don't understand all mathematics. Is that me being intellectually stunted? No, not necessarily. but I don't know the basics, some of the basics, and I still don't.
That's because you were homeschooled and you were schooled in a little different manner. But you've opened 4 businesses. One of them was quite successful. So you have evidence to your intellect and prowess as an individual. So
Yeah, but it's social media raising your kids isn't raising your kids.
I agree.
I mean, as we grow more sophisticated and complicated as a species, particularly with our technological productions, we're going to increasingly become aware of what emergent properties are in complicated systems, particularly the ones that are unexpected. Like when social media was created, it wasn't created with the purpose of stunting the development of our children. It was created for perfectly rational and good reasons. The fact that it is stunting the development of our children is an accidental emergent property that was not that. I mean, in hindsight, could we have predicted it? Maybe, but it's always so easy to see things in hindsight. And of course, the rollout in reality isn't. There's no one world government. Like it's not some controlled rollout. You know, it's
Yeah.
we're basically constantly experimenting with ourselves, and the more we produce complicated technologies, the more those technologies are going to have um, unexpected interactions and
Unintended
results with
consequences.
And I'm
yeah,
not sure,
let's
as
put it
sure
that
as
way.
we, I'm quite sure as we continue down the path of developing technologically, we will run across more of these problems, and I'm doing air quotes because we didn't foresee them when we created the product, and then eventually it created a problem. And like this is going to happen in perpetuity. It's not like back in the Middle Ages they're like, oh well, what's this leaf? Let's boil it in some water. They boil it and they drink it. They're like, well, he's dead. Well, I guess we don't need to drink that, you know. And so we can sit here and deliberate on how technology has really damaged society, but from my perspective, it's our responsibility to influence the people around us in a positive manner so that it doesn't damage them the way it's damaging other people, in the way that they derive their whole self-worth off of it.
Yeah,
Maybe you could
I'm on that. I second that. But you know, it's supposed to me. I think it was for the efficiency part for the
Mhm.
human life. Really? I mean, is it really? I mean, look at all the defects.
Well, it's like the Filipino,
well, in theory,
ocean going people.
it's good, right? Like that's what I was just talking about. Like we can always see the positives. The positives are front load. Increasingly, the positive effects of a new technology are front loaded. We see those very clearly, but the negatives are more subtle and take more time to evolve and kind of insinuate themselves into the society. And I think that in the past, when we created new technologies, we never really had to worry about whether or not like there would be the hidden negatives to a technology would would outweigh the positives. We just kind of went for it, and never had to worry too much about it because it's like oh, penicillin, is this really gonna like what are the negatives to penicillin? Like fuck it, this is gonna do so much good. We're not even gonna worry about it. But I think now we're entering a situation where for the first time in human history, our technology. Well, you could argue that maybe like the atom bomb was the first time, or I don't know, but like we're definitely at a point now where the new cutting edge technology is of such power that I think it would be prudent for us as a society, and this is what guys like Elon Musk are begging, like with a 6-month hold on AI research. They're begging us, like, let's just slow down on releasing new technologies for a moment, willy nilly, and just running the experiment live. The technologies are now so profound and so powerful that maybe we want to actually think about those negatives ahead of time rather that I think we've always just thrown it out there and well, let's see if it works. Some people died, then it didn't. But now it's like, well, let's throw AI out there. If it doesn't work, the whole human race might get extinguished.
I mean,
Okay,
but
that's
we are
a difference
evolving
than
so
a few
fast
people
now.
dying. Like that's all the people dying. There's a big
Yes.
difference.
We are evolving so fast now. I'm 56 years old, so I remember, I graduated high school in '85, and I mean I remember the TRS 80 Radio Shack Candy computer.
Trash
Like,
80, baby.
okay. now,
Good
if
stuff.
you would told me back then in 1984 when I was a junior in high school that we would have phones that we can talk to people around the world, FaceTime, in real. It's like the Jetsons has come to life in reality.
Yeah.
So
Star Trek.
technology,
Full-on Star Trek.
the aspect of technology used to be what every 25 years, every 50 years, and from that to 20 years to 10 years. Now it's like every 6 months. It's
Yeah.
even getting faster. It's moving so fast that time seems like it's moving faster.
Well, it's the knowledge bell curve, right? So like it took us how many years to get out of the Stone Age, quote unquote, right? Or out of the Ironworks age. You know, and as we learn more, the speed that we'll learn things keeps increasing.
But isn't the idea of the bell curve, even though it's rapidly, there's still a tail end to it, right? So there's still the other side of that curve. So where is that?
Who knows?
Yeah, that's
Where's
the
that-
question. Does it actually
Well-
drop?
Well, maybe it doesn't. We don't know. I mean, from our imagination, we can imagine a lot of things, but in reality, we don't know. We don't know. All we know is
I
that we
don't
keep
think it'll
learning
tail.
things. We keep learning things at a higher rate, and so the bell curve theory, to somewhat degree, applies, but we don't know.
So it's
Well, the bell curve is a I mean, that's a description of a type of.
It's an
data set.
analogy.
Well, I would
And
say the
it's-
Pareto
I don't
distribution
think
is the
it-
issue.
I don't think it has a lot-
accelerationism? What is it called?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because like, see, that's what I'm more interested in. Like, I don't see it as a bell curve. I just see it as an arrow going up. I don't
Yeah.
see a point. Like, the best I could see that arrow doing is maybe plateauing a bit, but I don't see it. Like, it only goes down if we have some kind of nuclear holocaust, economic collapse, or like a really big asteroid gets through. You know, like a dinosaur killer. Like, otherwise, it's why I'm ultimately not a conservative, because like ultimately a lot of conservatives want to like roll things back to the way they were, and I'm like, no, we're not going back.
There
we're
are,
going up.
yeah,
So
there are
we
two
gotta
sides.
figure out how to make it work while keeping the momentum, because I don't think we're gonna slow. Like Elon Musk is asking everyone to slow down. You notice no one's listening to him. No one gives a fuck. We're not slowing down.
How
Like
do you
we
slow
gotta.
down a rocket ship?
Yeah,
We've got the tiger by the tail, and we're not gonna let go, but we're figuring out how to steer this fucking thing. That's what's going on. We're figuring out how to steer the tiger.
We're the first guy to jump on the back of a wild fucking horse and say, "No, I wonder what could go wrong here."
No, we're not thinking what can go wrong. We're thinking what can go right. If I can
Yeah.
figure out how to steer this fucking tiger, we can really get somewhere. We're not thinking about the fact that if we don't figure out how to steer it,
It's gonna eat us.
It's gonna
Yeah.
eat us. Yeah.
Yeah, there could be a problem with that, but I
Technology.
think it's interesting to think there are two thought processes that are running through my mind, because you mentioned that people like to completely retract themselves from technology, and I think that can be kind of stated in the homesteading community to some degree. And then there's another subsect. I don't know if you guys know of the Bajau sea nomads in Southern Asia. They
I've heard of
live, yeah, they live their lifestyle day to day. They go out and they fish every day. They swim. They're the type of people that have a enlarged spleen, so they can stay underwater for 5 minutes on average.
Yes.
And so it's incredible. And they gather enough fish for the day, and the rest of the day they just sit back, relax, and enjoy life, spend time with their family. And so there's
nature.
right, and then here in America we work. If we could work 24
They have
hours
way
a
more
day,
free
we would
time
do
than
it.
us.
But our bodies limit us, and so we just work. We're like these
Right.
little industrious little toots, and
That's true.
and I think there's a balance there to some degree, in trying to figure out where that line is. I think we all need to assign that to ourselves, and that's a personal thing. But
We can't have this is kind of one of the problems when we were talking about like ditch diggers, and I think Peterson's talked about this, and I can certainly speak from my own experience. When I took a year off, the only year I ever took off work, because I got laid off with a huge check and I could go on full EI, and I did it. And I thought, oh, this would be interesting. First 6 months, I had a blast. The last 6 months, I was in like the deepest depression of my life and in a really bad place. And that's like one of the things Peterson has said is like people need to work. Like, you need to have, like, for your free time to have meaning, it needs to be somewhat truncated. Like, if all you have is free time, like if we get to that
We
part
need a purpose
where,
as a society.
well, you need to have something, you need to have a reason to get up and get going. And I think for a lot of people, they don't have like natural passions or drives or inclinations that's going to do that for them. So they actually need the structure of like having a 9 to 5 job, because that gives them something to do with their time, that's contributing value to the society, that's producing like good results in themselves psychologically and physically. It's better than lazing around the house, and you feel, you pay your own way, you feel good about yourself. And but if left, it's like freedom, horrible freedom. Like, everyone loves this word freedom, but it's like, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because if, like, what's the only possible thing that any rational person can really imagine being a threat to, like, God, to an omnipotent, invulnerable entity? As far as I can figure out, the only problem would be boredom, would be having no purpose, having nothing to do.
So I'm going to let. I
And
know a couple people had some things to say, and I want to let them get a chance to. Stallings, you and Phil were talking at the same time. What were you going to say, Bubba?
You lost me.
Okay, Fly or Aaron. I know you guys had chimed in. We all kind of talked at once. So I want to get everybody a chance to say what they were going to say.
No, I've just been struggling with some internet issues here. I think I'm back on, but we'll
Okay.
see.
Fly.
Yeah, I mean, even with the working thing, you have a purpose. But I have you work all your life to retire in old age, and you contemplate that on your last breath, right? So it's like you're a parody of yourself practicing your own oblivion. That's how I feel about working. Um, especially with the technology age today. If you go back and look at the cathedrals 200 years ago, what was the technology back then?
How did they do it? Right? How did they make these
I mean, I can't
magnificent
see
things?
horse and buggies just doing that. They were just horse and buggy. No, man, look how intricate the buildings, the cathedrals are.
Again,
yeah, Gothic architecture and all that sort of thing is pretty crazy.
They
I
were
would
they
like.
was much they were the people back then. I think they were wiser, smarter, more intelligent.
Well, they were
Every,
more self-contained.
there's nothing new underneath the sun. There's nothing new.
They
That's
didn't
how.
have technology to handle a lot of the cognitive load. So, like, it's really fun. I remember when I had to go back, and I got expelled from a few high schools, and had to go back and get my grade 12 equivalency as a man, as a 26-year-old. And it was quite shocking to me to discover that I no longer knew how to do long division. I had to relearn from scratch how to do long division, because I hadn't done it since like fourth or fifth grade. And those people back then, that kind of basic knowledge, all of them had it, and none of them forgot it, because they didn't have cell phones. The best they had was a pen and paper. And it wasn't even that long ago when your average person was illiterate, didn't write. Only the priests and the monks knew how to read and write. So everything was in their head. Everything was up there.
That's
If
true.
I could
Very
add,
true.
if I could
Very
add quickly, I just returned from the United Kingdom and Scotland and last week, and perspective of Americans think 100 years is a long time, but the English think 100 miles is a long distance. It's relative when we, I think, as Americans can think of our past and history, and I know we've talked a little bit about that, but the human experiment has changed. It's different in the Renaissance. It's different in the 1200s when they're building these castles, and you ask about people's life, and yeah, they might have been happy cobbling some stones together, but really it was a life full of pain and misery and non-medication and early
dysentery.
death and early childhood. And so we can say that from our perspective, oh, they had a job to do, therefore their life must have been fulfilling and dying at a late age of 35. It's not true. This world has been built on pain. This is our time to experience that pain, and a lot of that is these quick dopamine hits and loss of connection to humanity. That's our challenge. the people of the past have had their own challenges. So the only thing I wanted to add, listening to everybody, and y'all have great, um, I have blinders on a lot of the topics you are talking about with AI, and I like this idea that the present people, us right now, are we trying to live for ourselves? Are we trying to live for the future? Are we trying to remember the past? Are we trying to do all of it? And ultimately, if the question is what's right for you, of course, that's your own choice. But when we're talking about society and how these almost these uh, myopic thinking of the self is destructive. What are we trying to do? What's the end goal? Is the idea of technology to improve life or improve our lives or improve society's lives? If we don't have a goal as a people, I think we are in serious trouble. To agree to the fact that people are miserable without jobs and scary, scary freedom is a thing, but I would think that it is on those of us that are alive in the present to start making connections. We might not have solutions, but to start to connecting, which I appreciate that y'all have involved me here. So thank you.
I think you're bringing up a really good point that one of the challenges we have with technology today is there's no aim. We're not solving a problem. Because the old saying of necessity is the mother of all invention. So I liked your idea of talking about the UK and Scotland. In the 12th century, prior to them getting like sewage, right? Was, oh, wait a second, people are all dying of dysentery. How do
Right.
we stop this? And right now, our plights are really self created. Like most of the things that kill people today are of their own doing. We don't really have the same environmental p- aim societally. And the other side of that, and this is going to make probably a longer conversation that we might pick up next week because we're at an hour and 15 minutes. Um, the thing that we have to consider is not only do we not have an aim, but when we were looking at society, that used to be relegated to 20 miles of your house. Okay? The broader group has become the planet when that was never in any point in history the case. If you look at any of the empires in the past, all of them were not able to control the empire, whether it be the Romans, whether it be the Genghis Khan, whether it be Napoleon, whether it be the British Empire. None of them were able to control the entirety of the world because of an inability to have a single direction or to be able to unite the group of people. So I think one of the challenges we have to consider is we haven't talked about, I don't want to use the term limiting, but we just went from in the 1950s, okay, less than 100 years ago, where your societal group didn't get out of your neighborhood, okay, to I know what's going on in Baghdad. I know what's going on anywhere in the world. All I have to do is search that area and I can know what's going on there. We have changed in a level of exposure that has never existed in mankind. So I think you're very right in saying that we haven't considered how we're not solving a problem. We're just, that's like the younger generation today wants change for the fucking sake of change. They're not fixing something that's broken. They're breaking shit so that they have something to fix. And I think that's one of our plights.
Do you, do, do you think when you say there's nothing to fix, so what you're saying is everything is perfection right now, so
No,
therefore,
no, no, no. What I'm saying is, okay, we were talking earlier about having our needs met, right?
hmm
So for the most part, unless you are choosing poorly, okay, you can survive without
Yeah,
dying, right?
but that's just the first. Like that's the
The basic needs,
basics.
right? So, but what I'm saying is, if you
It's the
consider,
top of the pyramid that's the
right,
problem.
so, but if you look at it as a time continuum, right, and you look at how people learn and then how people behave, we work in smaller groups. You have your socialization starts with your parents, then your school, then your work, your community, then your state, then your country, right? And then the world. Like, and that's the hierarchy of value too, right? You worry about your family, then you worry about your immediate family, then you worry about your community, then your state, then your country, then the world. But right now, our leaders are going, we have to look at the world and foregoing anything at the granular or overrunning the granular because the bigger picture is more important. The global alarmists, right? Oh my God, the planet's going to die. So we stop producing meat. We stop making cars. We stop making oil because the planet's going to die. And the unintended consequence is the smaller group gets crushed by the larger group. But nobody's in control of the larger group, which is the same problem that I mentioned with the other dictators of the world or conquerors of the world is
Well,
that
there's no unifying vision.
that's my
It's
point.
like what I
That
was saying earlier. Jordan Peterson's talked about this a lot too. I like how he talks about heaven, the Christian idea of heaven, not as a literal place that exists now in some extra dimensional space, but as a blueprint for what humanity is trying to create in the future, for what the goal of humanity should be overall for the future, which is to create a reality where nobody feels pain that is unwanted, nobody dies, and all of our wills and desires are just met and effortlessly manifested. So we basically all become gods living in heaven. That is,
an impossibility.
I like. Oh no, it's completely possible. There's nothing to suggest that I'm aware of that in this universe with its configuration we can't make that happen.
The seven
with
of us
technology.
couldn't agree on one. If we were in one room
It'll take
and we were
a
God,
lot more time
Right,
and
the-
effort
but
and
the
a
s-
lot more people dying.
So this
Like,
is like an
that'll-
AI heaven? Is that what we're talking about? Is that
Well,
like an
AI
artificial heaven?
artificial is a word that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me in most contexts because I mean it's going to be made of this universe. So I mean, like us,
like,
I think at that level the division between like what we make as people and what the universe has made, it ceases to matter. I mean, it wouldn't bother me.
Great.
There's one thing I'll throw out there, and this is maybe again on the philosophical scale that we've kind of touched on. There's nothing that we have today that at some point somebody thought was impossible. So like the marvel of technology, go back into the 1950s, the idea that we'd be carrying phones around, someone back in the 1950s probably said, no, that's impossible. What we as humanity has constantly done is made the impossible possible.
That physicist in the late 19th century who very adamantly asserted that bumblebees could not fly. It was physically impossible and that it was God allowing them to fly.
yeah,
And then we found out a bit more about, fluid dynamics, air resistance, and physics. And it turns out bumblebees can fly perfectly fine.
I'm going to give everybody a final say because we're at almost an hour and a half. And I, first of all, want to thank absolutely everyone for taking their time today and joining the discussion. It's been very appreciated and thoughtful, and thank everyone for their thoughts. And I want to give my 2 cents, and then each person I would like you to kind of articulate whether it be something that changed your thoughts from the discussion, because I think that should be the ending of our Discord discussion, is to not necessarily admit but articulate something that we hadn't considered as pertaining to the topic of today's discussion. So I'm going to start and say that we have advanced technologically and we have lost the marvel, but I think that one of the things that was mentioned today that really kind of stuck out is that we're going to be forever we made the joke of riding the tiger, right? But that's been mankind forever. man. And right now, our challenge is trying to hold together the speed in which we're moving through time and the technological advancement that is enabling that speed. And I think that's something that we have to contend with as a society and really address sooner than later. And I'll let ML go, then I'll grab Aaron and just walk down the list. So go ahead, ML. You're lighting up, but nothing's coming out.
Thank you. For me, my big takeaway once again is just it's something that Peterson's talked a lot about and that I'm thinking a lot about is just that I think it's inevitable. I think we're seeing it right now that AI, like good software and technology, are going to be doing most of the work that has consumed most human beings' lives for most of the time, and we're going to have to really work on that self-actualization part of the pyramid en masse for Maslow's. But I think like the key thing that's missing is that there isn't a goal for the future of humankind anymore. Um, when we were when humankind was all uh, existing in religious structures before postmodernism, before the lost generation, before the rise of atheism, we didn't really have that problem because uh, each of the grand religious narratives has like meaning and purpose and goals for humanity built into its narrative and mythology. So all that was nicely taken care of. We didn't have to worry about that. You know, you could always, if you didn't have anything to do, you could always work towards the glory of God, and there was lots of work to do for that. But now we we've become very secular in the West, and we have abandoned those notions for the most part, and instead we have this vacuum of just nothing. So I think that it's the reason I think that you see the suicide rate being so high amongst rich people in the West. Rich people kill themselves at a much higher rate than poor people in the West. And to me that makes perfect sense because it's like you you get to the top and you like there's nowhere else to go. You're at the top of whatever it is that you're doing. And now you're like, okay, what's next? You had hoped that getting to the top would itself just fulfill you and that would be enough, but it's not enough. It never is. and and after that you need something bigger than you, because you yourself are not enough. You're just not enough. You need a grand narrative. You need something larger than you that you can sublimate yourself to and go with. And we don't have that in the West anymore, and that's what we need. All these environmental alarmists, all they do is talk about how bad it could be. You know what they never talk about? They never talk about how good it could be.
Mm.
What a world could look like where we're not burning hydrocarbons for energy anymore. They never talk about how good that world could be. Cities where all the skyscrapers are draped in moss and plants, where the cities are quiet, where there's no pollution, where all of your food that you eat is organically and locally grown. Like the
That's
farm where you get your
that's
meat,
utopia.
you can visit the farm. They're like
Well,
everything that you're putting in yourself. They never talk about that. All they do is talk about ooh, scary, scary. And I'm just like, we have to we have to come up with new grand narratives that are ubiquitous and appeal to everyone, that give us something to strive towards. Otherwise, we're going to simply sit in our gilded cages, distracting ourselves until we die because we have no purpose. So I'll end there. We need grand narratives of optimistic, positive futures for humanity, what it's going to look like in the future, not doom and gloom, but good.
I like
Like
that.
the science fiction magazines used to do in
Yeah.
the 20s and 30s, like the Jetsons show. I mean, there was
You
no
can keep
negativity in that. It was all positive and like, look
I
at
know.
how great this could be. Let's work towards that. We need that.
It's
I'll end
not
there.
Aaron,
like
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm working I'm working my way down the list. Everybody will get an opportunity.
I'll just go back to like the original discussion that we started off with around, the marvel of technology and how maybe there's a bit of an assertion that we don't marvel in it so much. And what I would actually argue is we do. I mean, we had a really a thoughtful conversation about where does AI fit in and how that's going to impact us. I mean, that's one of the like Chat GPT is one of the more recent breakthroughs that has so much potential, and we just don't know where that's going to go. And you can go back 10 years, 20 years, and you can look at other technologies that have come along that have been breakthroughs that have really changed this world significantly for the better. Is it that utopia? No, not yet. But it affords the opportunity to progress towards that, I guess is what I would say. And so, there will be another breakthrough technology that it's going to happen in our lifetimes easily. There will be probably dozens of them. So, I'm excited about the future, even though everybody can't agree what that future needs to look like. I just think, what's going to be accomplished it's going to blow my mind.
Phil?
Yes. When you talk about technology and how quickly it's advancing, there's always a lot of fear mongering. I think we've all kind of said this at one point or another, but there's also a lot of good to come from it, um, whether or not we see it or not. Um, of course, there's also a possibility of mass destruction. You could go down that path, but there's also the possibility of very good outcome. So I think for me, I'm curious as to where it goes. I'm curious how it'll go where it's going. And of course, you could also be a little faulty and say you could be hopeful that things go in a good manner and that the impact is positive. So I'd prefer to stay curious because I don't get let down.
All right, Mr. Starling.
Um, I agree with majority of all that's been said. I do like this idea of said earlier about a direction or a grand narrative, and something being the positive ideas of technology and AI. I think we've kind of talked about the dangers, the unknown, be that curiosity of of self destruction or leaning towards a utopia. But I think what I would like to end on is I like this idea of technology still working in our lives, small that we might not notice, or it hasn't happened yet. But this direction of like a post scarcity for the world, not just as Americans here in the West, but if there is a drive for mankind that I think majority of mankind could agree to is the avoidance and prevention of suffering, that technology can be an agent of social and cultural change when it's shown to be positive. So I really am interested in that idea, and I hope I could talk more about it. Thank you.
And the fly optician.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Hey, it's been a great deal. I will leave you guys with this. It's from Nikola Tesla. He said this in 1926, quote unquote. And this is what he said. He said, when wireless is perfectly applied, the whole earth will be converted into a huge brain, which in fact, all things being particles of real and rhythmic whole, we'll be able to communicate with one another instantly, irrespective of the distance. Not only television, and he called it telephony. He said we shall see and hear one another as perfectly as though we are face to face, despite intervening distances of thousands and thousands of miles. And the instruments, though which we shall be able to do this, will be amazingly simple compared with our present telephone. A man will be able to carry one in his vest pocket. This was said in 1926. That just amazes me, man. It amazes me.
And gentlemen, I absolutely appreciate all of you. Hopefully, you enjoyed the time, and I would love to have the panel back next week. Uh, I will have a post on the discussion. I thoroughly appreciate everyone's time, and I hope everyone who gets the opportunity to listen to this discussion takes away from them the own idea that we should be more conscientious of the fact that our technology is advancing around us, that it is making our lives better, and we should consider the fact that although there are dangers, we should all work towards the idea that being better is the byproduct of individual choice, not the byproduct of technological intervention. And on that, I'm done.